Infection, Humanity's Last Gasp, game by Victory Point Games, boxed edition. A game about this mysterious disease that is ravaging mankind and threatens to wipe out the entire human race from the planet. I know what you're thinking, pandemic. I thought so too before I actually picked up the game and I started reading the rulebook and playing the game. The game has a completely different feel to it, the mechanics are completely different, the game is a solitaire game for one. So actually let me show you how the game works so you can get a better sense for yourself about the mechanics, gameplay in general, and you will see that the only thing that this game is in common with Pandemic is pretty much the theme. Here you have the board of the game. My copy came with 2 copies of the board. One printed on cardstock and the other one mounted. I'm showing you the cardstock version here. The board is divided in 3 main areas. A petri dish where the virus that is devastating mankind mutates all the time. An incubator where proteins that you will use to build the antibodies are stored, and 4 new proteins will be available each turn. You simply refresh this area with the proteins that you will draw randomly from a pool. And then you have the area where you use the proteins to build the antibodies. Now, each turn starts with you drawing a card from this deck. Each card has several sections. The first section to be resolved is the mutation section, which instructs you to draw molecules from the molecule pool and to place them in areas of the petri dish where the virus is. For example, this card tells you to draw 2 molecules from the pool and to place them in hexes C4 and C8. We draw them randomly. Well, in this case, we're kind of peeking, but usually we should do it randomly. And we place them in C4. Here we go. And C8. So the virus is different already. Other cards may instruct you to place a molecule in an area that already contains one. For example, B2, we already have one in B2. In that case, we simply replace the one that was there with a new one that we draw from the pool. There may be other instructions that tell you slightly different things. In any case, the idea is that the virus will mutate most of the times. There are cards that will tell you that the virus doesn't mutate, but that is not going to be very common. Then you have stuff that happens in the lab. Cards will instruct you about, well, situations, conditions that may apply to the present turn and that regard people that work with you in your lab. Maybe no lab event happens, or stuff happens, and because of that, certain doctors will not want to work with other doctors. This has to do with lab cards that you can purchase during the game. Those lab cards include equipment, include doctors. Of course, they will grant you different types of advantages, which you can use in different parts of the term depending on what the advantage is. But these cards here, these effects, will add challenges and also a little bit of medical drama. You have these doctors that don't like each other very much and they are fighting. You see that they cannot put their differences aside as mankind is dying outside. A little bit of medical thriller there. Anyhow, these cards also have a death section that you do not need to worry about right now, but as the title of the section tells you, there is something to worry about just later in the turn. Then finally, it is time for you to complete your actions. You can perform several actions in any order. It just depends on the resources that you have and the resources that you want to spend. You have a track here that records the amount of money that you have, and you will spend money to purchase equipment, and the cost of the equipment is printed here. For example, if you want to buy this piece of equipment, it costs $3, let's call it 3 million, if this is the first of this type that you're purchasing. If you're purchasing multiple copies, then the second unit costs more. However, when you're trying to use a piece of equipment, if you only have one, the first unit, you roll a die and you need to roll within that range on a d6 to be able to actually benefit from the effect of the piece of equipment. If you have two such units, well, you put them together one on top of the other, they form a set, and in that case the success is automatic. You can benefit from the effect of the piece of equipment automatically. However, you can usually use only a single piece of equipment or a single set of equipment each turn, unless you have some doctor that allows you to break that rule. Of course, this is what the specialists usually do. They break rules to your advantage, they give you benefits. This doctor, for example, will help you during the containment check roll. You can use the +2 tokens that come with the card. However, she refuses to work with Dr. Amanda Brown. Medical thriller, more human drama there. So you can purchase lab cards, you can use lab cards, and you can and should purchase proteins from the incubator to build antibodies. The cost to build to purchase a protein is the one printed on the box of the protein. This one comes for free, 1, 2, 4, and you can purchase up to 2 per turn. After you purchase them, you place them here on your iPad that is used to build antibodies. Suppose that I am trying to build an antibody against the B molecule of the virus. I purchased that protein from the incubator and that cost 4. I need to pay that. I adjust my funding track. Then I also get this one. Actually, this one is for free. That's good. It was there. And I place it there. And then suppose that next turn I also managed to purchase this one. Hooray! So you buy proteins that you place on this section of the board. Another action you can do if you have a completed protein antibody is to use it to destroy molecules from the virus. You can destroy as many such molecules as you want that match an antibody that you have. In this case, a completed B. I can destroy as many B molecules as I want, as long as the molecule in the virus has at least 3 open sides, 3 edges of the axis in which the molecule is that are not touching other edges. For example, if I had the protein, the antibody D, I would be able to remove this molecule, 1, 2, 3, 3 edges. But even after remove that D1, this other D still only has 1 open, so I would not be able to remove it. In this case, I have B, so I can remove this one, and I can remove this one, which has 3 open edges. When I remove a molecule with an antibody, the turn in which I found the antibody, I gain the amount of money under the molecules that are removed. In this case, I would gain 4 plus $2 million. This only applies to the turn in which you discover the antibody. Actually, when that happens, what you do is you place the antibody that you found there, and then you place the proteins in the discard pile from the protein. Later in the game, you can still use that antibody that now counts as built to destroy molecules. You simply do not get money for doing so. After you're done performing your actions, you need to roll on the death toll track. You roll a die and you need to roll the number, one of the numbers in the range indicated in the phase of the game in which you are. For example, early in the game, the death toll marker is in the outbreak phase, and you need to roll between 3 and 6. If you roll between 3 and 6 in this phase, nothing happens. If you roll outside of that range, in the case 1 or 2, the marker advances by 1 spot. And that then there may be effects on the card that you drew at the beginning of the turn that modify that. For example, if you subtract 2 from your roll on the containment check, of course it is much harder to get a result between 3 and 6 than it would be otherwise. After you perform the containment check, you clean up, you go through a cleanup phase, simple maintenance. For example, you refresh the proteins in the incubator. In the basic game, the standard game, during cleanup, you also get 2 million just like that every turn for free. If you're playing the harder version of the game, then you do not get any money during that phase. Also, the harder version of the game is played on a different board, well, on the other side of this board, and it uses a slightly different pool of proteins. I mean, what I'm talking about, not of proteins, of molecules. Also, together with the molecules, you will place random event markers. You will place 2 bad events, which are the red ones, and 2 good events, which are the light blue ones. You will only use 2 of each type in each game, but in reality there are more. So in each game you have a different combination of possible good or bad stuff. When you draw one of those markers, then you simply look at this player aid here on the back of the rulebook, and that tells you what that special event does. And also there is some variability with the lab cards, the resources, because after you shuffle the deck of lab cards at the beginning of the game, you remove 5 cards without looking at them, so those cards will never be in play. And again, you do not know exactly what lab cards you're going to be able to rely on in your game. And you continue like this turn after turn until one of the following happens. The death toll marker may reach the end of the track. At that point, the number of people that died on the planet is such that mankind is doomed. You cannot revert the end of the world, pretty much. Or it may happen that all 19 spaces in the virus area are occupied by molecules. Then also that means that at that point the virus has mutated beyond any chance of figuring out a way to stop it. It may also be that at the end of your turn, during the cleanup phase, there are no available proteins to restock the incubator. And I guess that happens if you have a lot of proteins committed here without really having any of them usable, usable as a completed antibody. Then the game also ends. However, there is a way of winning the game, which is by removing all molecules from the virus area. If you do so, you have effectively eliminated the virus that is ravaging mankind. You are the savior of mankind. You win the Nobel Prize. You get a lot of academic job offers. You get your own reality show. A lot of good stuff will happen at that point, including the fact that you have won the game. Conclusions about Infection. The components are good, the rulebook is well written, the replay value is considerable when you have 2 levels of difficulties with 2 different boards, several variant games, resources that change from game to game. I think that really there is a lot of replay value in here, and also the fact that you do not know the resources, of course, prevents things from becoming too mechanical, too dry, which is important when you have a game that has such a puzzle component. Now, I talked about replay value, but how about play value? Because that, of course, is the point. Why would you care about replaying a game if you do not like it in the first place? Well, I personally liked it. I personally enjoyed it. And again, I found that surprising, given that I'm not particularly fond of puzzle games, of games that are abstract in nature. And even though at first sight this game did look abstract with the letters and the little puzzle pieces here and there, in reality I was surprised that maybe because of the cards and the medical drama that the cards create, or just the overall narrative of the game, I found that actually the game was pretty thematic. I did have the sense that yes, I was isolated from the outside world because I was locked up in this lab that was mankind's last hope, but bad stuff was happening and events were happening outside of the lab that would influence what happened in there. After I found that the theme was much more palpable in here than, say, in Pandemic. So I was impressed by that. The game has the things that I enjoy in solitaire games, in games in general: challenges, decisions, strategies that are discovered after a while, after trial and error, that may increase your chances of winning the game, but that do not lead to absolute certainty. Moments of tension, moments in which things seem to be going great, and then of course they derail in the opposite directions. Unexpected comeback from bad situations. All of these swings of fortunes that nevertheless combine well with the patterns that I see emerging from my decisions. So those swings of fortune do not look like they are playing the game for me. They feel like something that I'm interacting with. So good stuff. I enjoyed Infection. Not everybody will like the fact that it is a solitaire game only. I guess you can adapt it for multiplayer by sharing responsibilities or discussing what to do, but really at the core this is a solitaire game. This will be a minus for some that like to have the multiplayer option, but per se this is a good game. Light one, simple one, one that doesn't have much buzz about it, hasn't received much visibility, and I think it deserves more because I think that Infection is a worthy effort. Good game, green light from me.